And I guess let's just transition right into the spoiler cast here for Echoes of Wisdom if you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
So I would say about the story here for Echoes is like I think I think it's nice. I think it's fine. I think it's a little bit undercooked, and I think that the pacing of how you get the story information was a little, I don't know, like backloaded into the game where like you kind of just like find out who you're fighting towards the end of the game. So instead of the boss feeling like a really cool new character, it's kind of got more of that Bellum feel a little bit,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, which is too bad because I was hoping for something a little bit different than that. And like I said, I think the story's actually still fine. Like there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just there are some things I would have changed and tweaked.
Hmm. I um I agree, but I think that it's okay. Like I think I agree that it's not the most polished, not the most deep story out there, but I kind of feel like Echoes in a way is a game. Oh, how do I say this without making it sound bad? Like it's okay that it's kind of like not that deep gameplay and story-wise because I think it's more geared towards a younger audience. I think that you're mostly just there to kind of have fun with the echoes and like be creative with the echoes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where I'm like, it's okay. I don't need to look too deeply into this, even though there's a lot of stories in Zelda where I want to, like Tears of the Kingdom. I really wanted to look deeply. Breath of the Wild, I really wanted to look deeply. With this, it was like quaint and it was cozy and it was good, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with the amount of brain power that I had to use for the gameplay and the story of this game. Does that make sense without sounding bad?
It does, but I'm going to push back on that because
Okay.
I don't know if I agree with you there because I think you can have both. I think you could have a cozy, comfy game that's quaint and aimed towards maybe a younger audience with a really good story that is able to captivate younger players and older players. And I think
Hmm.
that the micro stories here are perfect. I wouldn't have changed a whole lot about any of the stories. And we could talk
Hmm.
about, Condi, we could talk about the scrubs, we could talk about all the different characters that you meet. I think I have no issue with any of those little stories. Um, but I think of like a game like Link's Awakening is very like I that game doesn't have much of a story, right? But like the story that is there with Marin telling you about the windfish and waking up and then you realizing it's all a dream, that's a pretty powerful story told in a progression in the game where the bosses are warning you about waking up. The story itself is like, it doesn't rely on cutscenes, it just relies on a couple pieces of text, one cutscene with Marin, and then the windfish, and it's like a really awesome story. And this is a 30-year-old game. um and I think it has one of like the I shouldn't say it doesn't have much of a story. It does have a really good story, but it's a simple story. It's easy to understand, and it's told in I like a different way, I guess. And I think I'd say the same about like Minish Cap. Like that game as well has like a really good story for a simple Zelda game for what it is, right? And there's like an
Hmm.
engaging villain that you meet at the very beginning and kind of build up that rivalry. And I think that's kind of what Echoes is missing just a little bit, for
Yeah.
me.
So you're saying with how they progressed the telling of the villain so you know who you're fighting, you didn't find the mystery kind of like fun until you were finally figuring it out?
Um, I mean, like sort of yes, but here's what I would have liked to see happen. I would have liked his. I like the mystery up until you get to Hyrule Castle and you're fighting
Hmm.
Ganon. And that's another thing actually I want to touch on is like I would have loved to know like and this isn't essential. This is probably just me wanting to be told what happens everything. So this is a big deal, but I would have loved to know where Ganon gets that staff at the very
Hmm.
beginning. Um, I would have loved to know where that came from. I would have loved to know like is Null smarter than we thought? Does he like did he position that there for Ganon to take, knowing that he'd be greedy and take this weapon? Like, is
I
Null
mean,
pulling the
if
strings?
Noel was pulling the strings for Zelda, he knew or it knew that Zelda was the priestess that would be able to get all these all the pieces from the goddesses, and Null is like, I'm just gonna let this priestess do my dirty work. So I think Null is smart enough to pull the strings in that way.
Fair, but okay, well, let's come back to that though, because I think that when you fight Ganon again at Hyrule Castle, that's the time where I'm like, the mysteries. I want to know who the mastermind here is, because that's a halfway point to the game, and at that I think that would have been a great point for Null to be introduced. And the other, I guess, thing with Null is that, I mean, you're correct. Null was definitely pulling the strings. Got Zelda to get all the Triforce pieces and let him into the Deku Tree. But I feel like the game kind of straddles between presenting Null as like a cunning villain, and also as like this just like ethereal force of nature. And I feel like you should be maybe one or the other.
Okay.
Like Vadi, for example, was a very cunning villain. And that's cool. That was his jam. He was very smart, very calculated. Calamity Ganon is this ethereal creature of nature who's just like literally hatred incarnate, which I actually also think is fine.
You do? Oh no, we don't need to get
for the
we don't
context
need to get into that.
for the context of what I'm saying in this moment,
Okay.
not with what I think Calamity Ganon should have became. That's different. But for the context of what I'm saying, like that's fine. Or there's got to be there's a better example. I don't know off the top of my head, but anyways, so like, I think like Null was like somewhere in between that a little bit, and I kind of wanted them to pick and present. And I guess the other thing too is like it kind of doesn't help for me. I'll be honest with most of my critiques about the story are about like Null and the way that the game like reveal of the voids and stuff like that was placed and paced. But Null, I think, would have worked better for me if we had like something or someone to like look at, and that's Null. And you get that at the end battle, but like that's the end of the game. And even then, he kind of looks like he's shape-shifting and weird and stuff like that. And I think that can work again, like we said, with Nightmare in Link's Awakening. But like again, Nightmare wasn't like pulling strings and kind of a tactician, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. It does. What I do agree with you here is that Null is very Bellum-like. The way that Bellum is introduced, like you have no idea what's going on. You think you're hunting a ghost ship for the first half of the game, and then you come to find out that Bellum is the one pulling the strings, and that's like the halfway point where Bellum is revealed, and then you fight Bellum at the end. And even still, like it's just not. He's not very fleshed out. His motivations aren't very like present. So I get it where I feel like Null is similar, but I think that the aspect that you're wondering if it should have been one or the other, I feel like the aspect that it was like this like celestial being almost. When I say celestial, I think of good, but this is like a bad celestial being. I think helped the mystery and helped the pacing in my mind, because I'm trying to think of the pacing of the game. So you have all these voids. What's going on with the voids? Is it Ganon? No. Link is in there. You get to Hyrule Castle, free the king. Turns out that Ganon is an echo, and that Link gets captured by this thing. And you're like, oh crap, what is the thing? Because it's not Ganon I'm fighting. So for the first half of the game, you're fighting Ganon, and like there's this mystery of like, is there something more going on? You find out that there is something more going on, and then he pulls the strings for the next half of the game, and then you fight him at the end. So to me, it feels fine. Like, I don't feel like it was too long to learn about him, because you kind of thought it was Ganon at the beginning, you know?
Did you? I didn't. Like, I don't think that any. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. Like, I don't think anybody thought that Ganon was like the final boss of this game. Like, I really
but, like,
don't.
You wonder, like, what's going on with Ganon. Like, why did he capture Zelda? Why did he take the tries? Why, what is going on with Ganon? And you defeat him so early on, you're like, maybe there's something bigger. And then you find out at Hyrule Castle that it is an echo and that there is something bigger.
Yeah, I guess that just wasn't much of a reveal to me, because Ganon's already been defeated and sucked into the void, and it's like, well, of course he's an echo. And he's like, that's like, yeah. And I get what you're saying about the celestial being. Like, I don't hate it. Like, I think it's fine. Like, it works fine in Echoes of Wisdom, but I would have tweaked it. Because I mean, like, let's put this in context. You do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and I think 6 dungeons before you actually get to know the villain's name and like what the villain actually is. And I think that just should have came a little bit earlier. Or you should have had Ganon as a more present antagonist, even if it was Echo Ganon, or maybe Echo Link. Maybe that's like your antagonist that you're fighting, like Dark Echo Link. My point is though, yeah, you know what this game needed? I feel like it needed a Zant.
Oh, I don't know if I would have liked that though, because I kind of am over the little puppet trope, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, Ganon is basically that in this game, anyways, for the first little bit, and like, I feel like it just like imagine Twilight Princess, okay? When do you find out that Ganondorf is actually like the bad guy?
Well, you
I
find out that he even exists in this game at Arbiter's
I
Grounds,
think it's
and
yeah,
then
Arbiter's Grounds.
you find out later that he's the one providing the power to Zant, and that that he could just take it. It was kind of funny because he did the same thing Null did, but with
Right,
Zant. No,
right.
he made Zant go do all his dirty work, and then he came out when it was most important.
Now imagine Twilight Princess without Zant until you get to that point in the game, right? Like you're like, well, I'm doing these like little stories. I'm healing Hyrule, which again is fine. That's fine, but it's just like that because there was a Zant character there, and because you thought that was the villain. I feel like that reveal worked so much better when you find out that it's actually Ganondorf, and to a lesser extent, I would say the same thing about the Helmer King in Wind Waker with Ganondorf, but yeah, like my problem with Null was that like I mean basically just immediately you know that Ganon isn't the real bad guy here. It's the voids. You just don't know what's causing it, what's and the explanation they give is fine. Null is just kind of this being that he's like a different version of the god, the goddess is there, and he wants to revert everything back to zero. I feel like that's fine. It's just I don't know. I was wanting a little bit more from it. I think I
I
was
get it.
wanting even like a cool new character like a Vadi or like a Zant, or I was wanting like a cool new like I don't know, just like something to add to the mythos of Zelda. Because like I feel like that is like we were talking about fresh elements earlier. Your fresh elements can be like a story development too. Like it doesn't have to just be gameplay. Like
True.
if we're
Very
playing
true.
a Zelda game and there's a significant like Skyward Sword for example, like you're creating the Master Sword, like that feels significant to me, and like a
Mhm.
fresh element that like makes the game seem really important. And so like if they'd really went with it here, and maybe they did, and I'm just like not picking up on it, but like if they really went with it and said like in terms of Zelda lore, everything that you know before this is changed. There wasn't 3 goddesses, there was 4, and one of them wants to like bring everything back to zero.
Oh no, it's the
And I didn't.
fourth week of the
Oh
Triforce.
yeah, no, I'm not talking. But you know what I mean, like or like Hylia had like a dark counterpart named Null or
Mhm.
something whatever. Um, something I feel like could have made and built Null up to be more of like kind of a cool threat or like I don't know. I just
Yeah,
it was fine, but it just kind of was. It left me a little bit wanting.
I get what you mean. I'm going to go back to my original point, though, in that I don't think it needs to be that deep, and I'm kind of okay that it wasn't. Like, I just felt like, and if this had been, let's say this had been Tears of the Kingdom, and this is how it played out, where Null was the villain and you didn't find out until after the 5th dungeon, I would be on your side about this, but I think this is just like a cute 3D Zelda game. It's Zelda's debut as a playable character, officially licensed by Nintendo, and like, and you're the main focus is like echoes and like running around and puzzling out how to defeat enemies with that. I didn't think I'm gonna keep saying it. I just didn't think it needed to be that deep, and I'm okay that it wasn't.
I'm not saying it needs to be super deep. I just like a little bit more. Like I like why should we settle for like kind of a story, Like what's the difference between 2D Zelda and 3D Zelda? Like did we not have a Link to the Past with, setting the standard of Zelda with its great story and stuff? Like I see what you're saying, but like I really think you could do both. Like I think you can have like a quaint, cozy game and still have a pretty cool story that can resonate with new Zelda fans, old Zelda fans. And it was like it was almost there. It was almost there, and there was a few tweaks that I would have done to get it there. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I see what you're saying. I feel like that's kind of just like letting it off the hook though, and being like, like we got this. That's fine.
I I mean, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is kind of letting it off the hook, but I just feel, and maybe I just also feel a little tired after Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and their stories, and like how much I wanted, like I really like the story of Tears of the Kingdom. Don't get me wrong. And again, please don't concentrate on the negative things that I say, but I feel like if they had just made it a little bit more smoothly and like had it happen in a linear way, maybe I'm glad
Right.
the echoes happened in a linear way, and I'm just like happy that we finally got that after a few years of not getting that. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what?
So,
Amen to that.
so like if this had been a big 3D Zelda game, I wouldn't be like so I wouldn't settle for this. I'd be actually pretty disappointed, but since it's just a 2D Zelda game, that's kind of a place marker for me and something that I just enjoyed playing the gimmick, and I thought the story was good enough that I'm like, yeah, it is good enough for me.
And you know what? Like, I think that's fine too. Like, I certainly don't
Hmm.
want to seem like I don't want to seem like I'm sitting here saying that the story is bad. I don't. I
Yeah.
just like,
Don't like listeners don't focus on the
yeah.
negatives that we're saying here.
Like, I actually do. Like, I like the idea of Null. Like, I think it's kind of
Hmm.
a cool idea, but
Just wish
yeah,
it was a
I
little
don't
more
know.
fleshed out and flesh out a little sooner.
A little bit, yeah. Like, the pacing of the villain reveal, I would have done a little bit earlier, and I think I would have added a Zant to like a servant of Null or something like that. I don't know, or maybe it's just like instead of a Zant, like you have like Null captures Link, right? And like Link is like the antagonist throughout the game, which kind of sort of happens, but then kind of sort of drops off a little bit. Like I really liked fighting Link a bunch of times in there. Maybe I would have just kept up with that to have like Dark Link as like the Zant in the game, if you will, and
Hmm.
then you have a climactic battle with Link, because I think that would have been cool too if like you had a battle. Let's just say I don't know. Let's say Elden Temple or something like that. You have a battle with Link to finally free it of Null's kind of corruption. Then Null is like there and appears. It's like, oh dang, like what's that? Like
Hmm.
we got to take Null out. I don't know. I think I would have been something that I would have done. The story's fine, like the story's fine, and I guess at this point, like a fine story in Zelda is probably like better than maybe not a fine story, like I haven't loved the way that the stories have been told the last couple of games. You're right. So I mean, maybe it's just like we get to fine so we can get to great after that, but
Hmm.
I don't know, I guess I just feel like Zelda is so fantastic in literally every regard that when a certain element of it starts to dip a little bit, like the story, it's like I want that to be great again, to match all the other. Like the gameplay is great. The music is great. Every even Echoes of Wisdom is great. Like the game is great. The story I felt like was just a little bit low, so I want it to be great and not just like good.
Okay.
That's my
I guess
rant.
that's how you feel. I've got how I feel. Everybody's got how they feel, and I think that's fine.
Now listen, I don't want anybody to review bomb us saying like this guy hates Zelda. I don't. I really.
This guy, he talks so negative about Echoes of Wisdom.
Oh my.
God, I don't want to listen anymore.
You know what? We have a great fan of the show who I message with every now and then, and they sent me a screenshot of a review, and the screenshot is so good. It's like a 1-star review, and this reviewer is just like, Andy just talks over Allison all the time, asks what she thinks, and
Oh,
then tells her she's wrong. So there you go. This one's for you, buddy.
I love it. I love it.
Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this clip and want to see more of the Zelda Cast, make sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform of choice and subscribe. There are over 200 episodes in the vault that will provide you with hundreds of hours of Zelda content for you to enjoy. You can listen to us when you're on a walk, fighting Ganon, trying to sleep, whatever. And if you want to see these shows as they happen, make sure to head over to twitch.tv/the ZeldaCast, where you can watch our beautiful faces talk about Zelda every single week. Don't miss out, and we'll see you next time.